My mother's voice pierced through the sterile air of the hospital room, sharp and cold. "Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months," she yelled, her words echoing in my ears. The bitterness of her tone twisted something deep within me. I sat there, stunned, my trembling hands clutching my phone as my 2-year-old twins, Ethan and Emily, played quietly in the corner of the room. The pain in my abdomen was unbearable, like a knife twisting inside me, but it was her indifference that hurt the most. It was Christmas Eve at Las Vegas Medical Center, and I had just been admitted for emergency surgery due to internal bleeding. 6 months after losing my husband, James, in a tragic car accident, my body had failed me, and my family had abandoned me. My parents, who had always been the perfect image of selfishness, couldn't even take the time to watch their own grandchildren while I underwent a life-threatening procedure. I was Natasha Wilson, 33 years old, and I had spent my life as an afterthought. My younger sister, Jessica, was always the golden child, the perfect one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was the one who had to bear the burden of their financial needs, despite the fact that I was the one who needed support now more than ever. I had been supporting them financially since they retired early 3 years ago, sending them $2,500 each month to help with their mortgage and expenses. Even after James died, I continued to do so, believing that family should stand by each other no matter what. How foolish I was. When I finally called them, asking for help during this emergency, my father's response shattered me. "You're becoming a real nuisance, Natasha. We're retired now, and we deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems." He didn't even care to ask how I was feeling, if I was okay. His only concern was their concert tickets. I had never been so disgusted in my life. Tears silently fell onto the hospital blanket as I sat there, the pain from my surgery and the weight of their abandonment nearly suffocating me. Valerie, a nurse I had barely known, saw my distress and gently squeezed my shoulder. "My friend Olivia is a professional nanny who specializes in childhood trauma. Let me call her for you," she said softly, offering a kindness that felt worlds apart from the cruelty of my parents. As I lay there in that sterile room, surrounded by the sharp scent of antiseptic and the beeping of machines, I realized something that hit me like a lightning bolt. I didn't need them anymore. Not the way they needed me. Not the way they had always used me. I had been giving and giving, expecting something in return, but it was never enough. The surgery was critical, but not as critical as my own self-worth, which had been torn down for years. I wanted my children to grow up knowing what it felt like to be truly loved and supported. I couldn't let them grow up believing that it was normal to be treated like I had been treated. Valerie returned shortly, a soft smile on her face, but her eyes were filled with concern. "Olivia will be here within the hour," she assured me. "She's amazing with kids. She used to work with trauma victims at the Children's Hospital before becoming a private nanny." For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope. Olivia would take care of my children while I fought for my life. But the thought of the money I had been sending my parents, month after month, haunted me. $2,500 a month. Money that I had scraped together from my salary as a graphic designer, despite my own needs, despite the overwhelming grief of losing James. And yet, my parents, who should have been the first to step up and care for my children when I was at my weakest, couldn't even cancel a single concert for me. It was clear now that I had been nothing more than their financial lifeline, a constant source of support that they had come to expect without question. And the worst part? I had allowed it. I had allowed myself to be treated as their personal bank, as if my own needs didn't matter. They had never asked about my well-being, not once. Not even after the surgery that could have taken my life. I knew it was time to make a change. The thought came to me like a sudden, almost violent clarity. I needed to sever the ties that had bound me to them for all these years. "Could you bring me my phone one more time?" I asked Valerie, my voice shaking slightly. With trembling hands, I unlocked the screen and opened my bank app. The decision was almost instinctual now. I canceled all future automatic transfers to my parents' account. They wouldn't get another dime from me. It wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my life, my autonomy, The second message I sent was even more decisive. I wrote to my parents, "I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Don't contact me again." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. The weight of the decision, though heavy, also felt freeing. It was the first time in years I had done something for myself. And it was the first time in years that I had chosen my children's future over my parents' selfishness. The surgery went well. I was awake but groggy, the pain still present but manageable. I spent 5 days in the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness, unsure if I was awake or dreaming. Throughout it all, Olivia stayed by my side, taking care of the twins. She was my lifeline now. But as the days passed, my phone continued to buzz relentlessly. I had 27 missed calls and countless messages from my parents and Jessica, mostly about the money I had cut off. Not once did they ask about the surgery, how I was recovering, or how the twins were coping without me. The final message from my father hit me like a slap across the face. "You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable." The level of selfishness was staggering. After all the years I had sacrificed for them, this was their response. My sister's messages were different, though. She seemed genuinely confused. "Mom and Dad just told me you were having some minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" I could hear her disbelief, and it sparked something inside me. My parents had lied to her, minimized the severity of my surgery, all to justify their decision to prioritize their concert tickets over their own daughter and grandchildren. I felt a wave of sadness for her. She had never truly understood what it was like to be on the receiving end of their neglect. I decided to tell her the truth. Through a haze of painkillers and fatigue, I typed out the full story. "I'm having emergency surgery for internal bleeding. I asked them to help with the kids while I was in surgery. They refused because they had concert tickets. They didn't care about me or my children. This is the last time I will help them financially. I am done." Her response came quickly. "Oh my God, Natasha, I had no idea it was that serious. They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup. I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry I believed them." Her apology wasn't enough to erase the years of pain, but for the first time, I saw a glimpse of sincerity in her. I wasn't ready to trust her completely, but I did believe she had been manipulated by our parents for far too long. I hoped this realization would help her see them for who they truly were. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was slowly regaining my strength, the incision still throbbing occasionally when I moved too quickly. But despite the physical discomfort, something inside me felt lighter, freer. For the first time in years, I was living without the constant weight of my parents' demands on my shoulders. I wasn't their ATM anymore, and I wasn't going to be the one to fix their problems. Olivia had been a godsend, coming every morning to help with the twins while I worked from home. My graphic design clients had been understanding, adjusting to my limited availability, and I was grateful for that. It wasn't easy balancing work and recovery, but with Olivia's help, I was managing. I hadn't expected her to be such a strong presence in my life, but the way she cared for the twins while also offering emotional support was a lifeline. Jessica had also been visiting more often, so bringing healthy meals and spending time with the kids. At first, our conversations were tentative, careful, almost. But over time, she began to open up about her experiences growing up in our family. "They always made it seem like you were the one choosing to distance yourself," she admitted one evening as we watched the twins play. "I never realized they were pushing you away." Hearing her say that was like hearing the truth for the first time. It felt as though a layer had been peeled back from my eyes, revealing the full extent of the manipulation I had endured. It hadn't been me who had chosen to disconnect from them. It had been my parents who had made me feel like an outsider. They had always favored Jessica, always put her first, while I was left to pick up the pieces when things fell apart. Still, even with this revelation, I wasn't ready to fully trust Jessica. The damage had been done, and it would take more than a few visits to undo the years of manipulation. But I appreciated her efforts, even if I knew they were born out of guilt. She hadn't known the full extent of their actions, But now she was starting to see things more clearly. Then, one evening, came the knock I had been half expecting. I hesitated before opening the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew who it was before I even saw them, my parents. Standing in the hallway, my mother clutching her designer purse nervously, and my father with his arms crossed, that familiar, impatient expression etched on his face. I took a deep breath before opening the door just wide enough to speak through the gap. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Natasha, darling, we've been so worried," my mother began, her sugary tone instantly raising my defenses. "You haven't been answering our calls, and we needed to make sure you and the twins are all right." "We're fine," I replied flatly, my patience thinning. "Now, if that's all—" "It's not all," my father interrupted, pushing slightly against the door. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage payment, and we had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it." The audacity was breathtaking. After all these years, they still hadn't learned. There were no questions about how I was doing, no concern for the children they had abandoned, just demands for money. My anger surged, rising like a tidal wave that I could no longer hold back. "I told you," I said, my voice tight with restraint. "I'm cutting financial ties." I meant it. "Sweetie," my mother pleaded, her voice rising in pitch, "we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I adjusted our lifestyle based on your commitment to help us." "Commitment?" I echoed in disbelief, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "I've been sending you money out of guilt and obligation, while you couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery." My father's face darkened, his eyes narrowing as he prepared to strike back. "That's not fair, Natasha. We had plans." "Plans more important than my children's safety? More important than my life?" I demanded, my voice now trembling with fury. "Do you even know what the doctor said? There was a chance I might not survive that surgery. Did you even bother to ask?" Their silence was all the answer I needed. They hadn't cared. They hadn't cared about my life or my children. They had cared about their concert tickets, their vacations, their luxuries. "We made one mistake," my mother whispered, her voice cracking with a hint of desperation. "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment, Mom," I said quietly, feeling a strange calm wash over me. "This is consequence. I've spent my entire life seeking your approval and support, and in my moment of greatest need, you chose Elton John tickets over helping me." My father opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "I'm a parent too," I said, my voice steady now. "I would never treat Ethan and Emily the way you've treated me. Never." Just then, Emily toddled into view, clutching her stuffed giraffe. My mother's expression softened instantly, her eyes lighting up at the sight of her granddaughter. "There's my precious grandbaby," she cooed, bending down to reach for Emily, who looked up at her with uncertainty, backing away and glancing up at me. I looked down at my daughter, then back at my parents. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "When I'm ready to talk, if I'm ever ready, I'll reach out. But the money, it's no longer your concern." I gently closed the door, my heart pounding, but for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of peace. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I wasn't going back. The next morning, my parents came back with reinforcements. My Aunt Patty, my mother's sister, had always positioned herself as the family peacemaker. She was the type to play both sides, smoothing over conflicts and keeping things comfortable for everyone, no matter the cost. I heard her voice before I saw her, her pleas already starting from the other side of the door. "Natasha, honey, let's be reasonable," Aunt Patty said, her voice carrying through the thin apartment walls. "Your parents are struggling without your help." I didn't even open the door. I stayed quiet, leaning against the cool wood, my hand on the handle but not turning it. "They managed their finances for decades before I started helping them," I replied through the door, trying to keep the anger from seeping into my voice. "They chose early retirement knowing their savings weren't adequate." "Sweetheart, this isn't about the past," my mother's voice cut in, dramatic as always. "We made those decisions because you promised to help us. You said you'd always be there for us." I could feel the manipulation starting to take root again. The guilt, the words that had been weaponized against me for years, but I wasn't going to let it work this time. What I promised, I said, my voice more firm than I felt, was temporary help. I offered to support you after your retirement, but that became an expectation, and now I'm cutting ties. There was silence on the other side of the door. I could hear them trying to come to terms with my decision, trying to figure out how to manipulate me back into their control. Aunt Patty spoke up again, her tone soft and coaxing. Please, Natasha, we're family. You can't just turn your back on them, after everything they've done for you. Done for me? I interrupted, my pulse quickening. What have they done for me? They've taken everything I've given them and treated me like I owe them more. They've never been there for me when I needed them. Never. Aunt Patty's voice faltered. It's not that simple, Natasha. Your parents they don't know how to ask for help. They've always been proud, you know that. I let out a bitter laugh. Pride? This has nothing to do with pride. They chose their lives. They've spent money on luxuries they couldn't afford, and now they want me to bail them out. Well, I'm done. I turned my back to the door, stepping away from the familiar, suffocating silence. The knocking continued, but I ignored it. I wasn't their responsibility anymore. Not their emotional punching bag. Not their financial safety net. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their toxic cycle. The next few days passed in a strange kind of quiet. My parents didn't call again, not at first. I didn't respond to any of their texts or messages. I had been so conditioned to pick up the pieces for them, but now that I had stopped, I felt a strange relief. The emotional weight that had been crushing me for years was starting to lift. Jessica, however, had reached out more frequently. At first, I was hesitant to talk to her. I wasn't sure if I could fully trust her yet. But slowly, as we exchanged texts and talked on the phone, I began to see a different side of her. One that wasn't entirely shaped by our parents' manipulation. She seemed genuinely sorry for what had happened. For the first time in my life, I felt like she was finally beginning to understand. One day, she called me. I'm so sorry, Natasha, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I never realized how much you've been carrying all these years. I'm so sorry I didn't see it before. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands clenched around the phone. The tears came before I could stop them, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of knowing that, finally, someone in my family had seen the truth. I didn't know if this meant I could trust her fully, but it felt like a step forward. Maybe not all was lost. Thank you, Jess, I whispered, my voice breaking. I need time to process everything, but I'm glad you understand. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A week later, I got an unexpected call from Jessica. This time, her voice was filled with worry. Mom and Dad are in full panic mode, she said. They've started calling everyone in the family, asking for help. They're telling people you're the one who cut them off, that you've abandoned them. It's like they think you'll just cave and send the money again. The betrayal of my parents was still fresh, but I had learned one very important thing during this entire ordeal. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. Let them talk, I said flatly. The truth is out now. I'm not responsible for their actions anymore. But Jessica wasn't done. I don't think you realize how far they've gone. They've been lying to everyone, saying that you just decided not to help them anymore for no reason. They even told Aunt Patty and Uncle Robert that you just cut them off without warning. They're painting you as the villain in this story. The familiar pang of frustration gripped me, but I refused to let it break me this time. I knew what had happened. I knew the truth, and for the first time, I wasn't going to let their narrative define me. I'll handle it, I said calmly, my resolve solidifying. Let them talk. I'm not going back to that. A few weeks later, my parents' situation had only worsened. The calls kept coming, not only from them, but from extended family members, too. Everyone seemed to be in on the narrative my parents had spun, that I had betrayed them, that I had cut them off without cause. But none of it mattered anymore. The truth was there, and I was finally starting to see the people who had always taken from me for what they really were. One afternoon, I received a call from Jessica. Her voice was tight, like she was holding something back. I don't know what to do anymore, Natasha, she said, her words rushed. I tried talking to Mom and Dad, but it's like they think you're just going to give in and help them again. They're going around telling everyone that you've just abandoned them and that they can't survive without you. They're still ignoring everything you've said." I could hear the frustration in her voice, and it echoed my own feelings. It was hard to watch them spiral like this, but I couldn't allow myself to get pulled back into their toxic orbit. I had made my choice, and I had to stick with it. "I'm not going back to that," I said firmly. "They made their choices, and now they're facing the consequences. I'm not going to bail them out anymore." Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "I get it," she said softly, but there was something in her voice that made me hesitate. "But what about me, Natasha? What about us? I know we've been through a lot, but I don't want to lose you too." The words stung, but they also opened something inside me. Was I truly willing to cut her off completely because of our parents' mistakes? I wasn't sure yet, but I didn't know how to bridge that gap. "I'm not cutting you off, Jess," I said, my voice softer now. "But I need you to understand that I'm doing this for me, for my kids. I've been through too much to keep pretending things are fine when they're not." She sighed. "I get it. I really do. I just wish I had known sooner what was really going on. I'm sorry for everything I didn't see." Her apology, however small, meant something. But I couldn't help but wonder, could things ever go back to the way they were? Could I ever truly trust her, knowing how deeply my parents had shaped her view of me? A few days later, Jessica dropped by for a visit. She brought the twins some toys and snacks, and we spent the afternoon together. The air between us still heavy with unspoken words. But as the day went on, I started to see a shift. She seemed genuinely invested in making things right, helping me with the kids, and asking me about my recovery. It was a start, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down completely. Later that week, I received an unexpected email from my father. It was a formal request, one I had dreaded and expected. He was asking for a loan, citing their mounting debts and their inability to make ends meet. It was clear from the tone of the email that they had exhausted all their options, and now they were desperate enough to swallow their pride and ask me for help again. The irony was not lost on me. After everything, after all the years of neglect, manipulation, and cruelty, they still thought I would come to their rescue. It made me sick. I read through the email once, then twice, before hitting the delete button without a second thought. I wasn't going to fall for it again. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was done. A few hours later, I got a text from Jessica. "Dad just called me crying. He's begging for your help. Mom's been sick, and they can't keep up with their bills. They're going to lose everything if you don't step in." Her words hit me like a brick, but I didn't respond right away. I needed time to think. I needed to sort through the emotions that were still tangled inside me. When I did finally reply, I kept it simple. "I'm sorry, Jess. I can't do it. I've helped them for too long, and I'm done." The message was short, but I felt the weight of it. It was a line in the sand, one I had crossed and could never go back from. I wasn't going to be manipulated by their guilt trips anymore. I had my own family now, my own life to build. The weeks that followed were quieter than I had expected. My parents' financial situation was quickly spiraling. Desperate, they started reaching out to other family members, trying to paint me as the villain. But I was done. I wasn't going to be manipulated back into their web. Jessica continued to check in, but she was also becoming frustrated. "They're making you out to be the bad guy," she said one evening. "They keep telling everyone you just cut them off for no reason." "I don't need you to defend me, Jess," I replied. "They've been doing this for years. I'm not going back to that." She paused, understanding my resolve. "I get it," she said quietly. "But I don't want to lose you, Natasha." I wasn't sure how to respond, but I appreciated her sincerity. After all the years of manipulation, it felt like a small but important step, but I couldn't let her in completely. Not yet. Days passed in a strange calm. I had made peace with my decision. The house I had just bought, with help from my support group, became a sanctuary. It wasn't just a home. It was my fresh start. I was free from the constant pressure and manipulation of my parents. I was finally building the life I deserved, one where I wasn't weighed down by obligation. Jessica kept me updated about my parents. Their financial struggles had reached a breaking point. "They're blaming you for everything, Natasha," she said. "They're telling everyone you abandoned them. It's like they refused to take any responsibility. I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't going to play the villain in their drama. Let them blame me, I said flatly. They've made their choices. Jessica was silent for a long time before responding. I know, but it's hard to watch. I didn't realize how much you've been carrying all these years. Her words made me pause. Maybe she hadn't understood before, but now she did. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but I was open to trying again. I'm not going back to them, Jess, I said, but I'm willing to try with you. I'll take that, she replied softly. I just want to make things right. A few days later, I received a final message from my parents. They were desperate. We don't know what to do without you, they begged. Please help us. I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen. But in that moment, I realized they didn't care about me. They cared about what I could do for them, and that was no longer enough. I deleted the message without responding. For once, my silence felt like the most powerful response. The days after that call were eerily calm. I had finally set my boundaries, and there was no turning back now. My parents, desperate as they were, began sending me a barrage of texts, voicemails, and even emails, each one more desperate than the last. But I ignored every single one. I didn't need to justify myself to them anymore. They had crossed a line that I couldn't undo. Jessica continued to check in regularly, but she was growing weary, too. They keep telling everyone how horrible you've been, she said one day, her frustration evident. They're making you out to be the villain. I don't know what to do anymore. The thought of my parents spreading lies about me to the rest of the family didn't surprise me, but hearing Jessica's voice crack with confusion and guilt made me pause. You don't need to defend me, Jess, I said, trying to calm her. They've been doing this to me for years. It's just their way of trying to control the narrative. I know, she replied softly. I just hate that it's tearing us apart. I never thought I'd be caught in the middle of all of this. I knew the feeling. For so long, I had been the one stuck in the middle, trying to keep everything together while constantly being overlooked. Now that I was free from that, it felt like a new world, one that I wasn't sure how to navigate yet. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going back. Over the next few weeks, things started to change for me in ways I hadn't expected. The support group I had joined, initially as a way to cope with the loss of James, had become something far more meaningful. Diana, the real estate agent I'd met through the group, had been a great source of strength. She helped me see possibilities I hadn't even considered before, like selling my small apartment and moving to a more family-friendly neighborhood. With Diana's guidance, I found a home in a quieter, safer part of the city. It was affordable, had a backyard for the twins to play in, and most importantly, it gave me the space to breathe. For the first time since I had lost James, I felt like I was finally moving forward. But as I started to rebuild, my parents' situation worsened. Their house was officially in foreclosure. Jessica told me that they had tried to sell the boat and the timeshare, but they hadn't managed to find buyers. The money they had spent on those luxuries was now the reason they were losing everything. Mom and Dad are freaking out, Jessica told me one evening. They're blaming you for everything. They keep saying that if you hadn't cut them off, they wouldn't be in this situation. It's like they refuse to take responsibility for their actions. I wasn't surprised. I had seen it coming, and I wasn't going to let their problems drag me back into the hole I had spent so long climbing out of. Let them blame me, I said, my voice firm. They're the ones who made these choices, not me. Jessica was silent for a long time, and when she finally spoke again, her voice was filled with a strange sense of resignation. I know, but it's hard to watch. I never realized how deep this went, Natasha. I guess I never understood how much you've been carrying all these years. Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the money or the material things. It was the years of emotional neglect, the constant feeling of being invisible, of being second place in my own family. And as much as I wanted to push her away, I knew that her apology, her acknowledgement, was a step in the right direction. I'm not going back to them, Jess, I said, the weight of my decision heavy in my chest. But I'm willing to try again with you. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm not ready to completely shut you out. "I'll take that," she replied, her voice soft but genuine. I want to make things right. I don't want to lose you too." The emotional toll of the past few months had been draining, but as I sat in my new home, surrounded by the peace I had created for myself and my children, I knew it had been worth it. I wasn't the same person I had been before the surgery. I had been forced to face the harsh truths about my family, about my own role in their manipulation, and I had come out the other side stronger. But even as I moved forward, my parents' desperation continued. They sent me one final message, this time pleading with me to reconsider. "Please, Natasha," it read, "we don't know what to do without you. You're all we have left. Please help us." I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen. But in that moment, I realized something profound. They didn't care about me. They never had. They only cared about what I could do for them. And that was no longer enough. I deleted the message without responding. My silence for once felt like the most powerful thing I could give them. Months passed, and the changes in my life were nothing short of transformative. My parents' financial collapse had been a long time coming, but I felt no joy in their misfortune. I had made my peace with the fact that I couldn't save them anymore. They had made their choices, and I had chosen to stop enabling them. I focused on rebuilding my own life, taking care of the twins, finding a new rhythm, and getting my own finances back on track. The support group I had joined after James's death had become a lifeline, connecting me with people who truly understood the weight of what I was going through. Diana from the group had helped me navigate this new chapter, suggesting things like selling my small apartment and buying a home that was more suitable for the twins. The house I bought wasn't big or fancy, but it was mine, and it was the first time I truly felt at peace in years. But even as I built my new life, my parents' drama continued. They had sold the boat and the timeshare, but it wasn't enough to save them from the mounting debts. Jessica kept me updated, and though I didn't want to be involved, I couldn't help but hear what was going on. "They're blaming you to everyone, Natasha," Jessica told me one evening. "They're still saying you're the one who cut them off for no reason. They won't take any responsibility for what happened." I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. "Let them talk," I said, my voice cold. "I'm done. They're not my responsibility anymore." Jessica, however, had started to see the truth. She was trying to make amends for her role in the manipulation, but I wasn't ready to fully trust her just yet. "I know, but it's still hard," she admitted. "I didn't see it before, but now I do. I don't want to go back to the way things were," I said firmly. "I can't, but we can move forward, slowly, one step at a time." Things were different now. For the first time in years, I wasn't at the mercy of my parents' expectations and manipulations. I was finally putting myself and my children first, and it felt like a small victory every day. Then, one morning, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from my mother. The letter was handwritten, and I almost tossed it aside without reading it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside, there was something I hadn't expected. A genuine apology. My mother wrote about her regrets, how she had always been jealous of my independence, and how she had failed me as a mother. She admitted that she had let her own pride get in the way of being there for me when I needed her most. There was no mention of money, no request for forgiveness, just an acknowledgement of her failures and a plea for understanding. Reading it was both a relief and a burden. I didn't know how to feel. After all these years, she was finally recognizing the hurt she had caused. But that didn't erase the years of emotional neglect or the damage they had done. I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her. Not yet. Not after everything. Jessica, however, seemed hopeful. She called me right away. "Have you read the letter?" she asked, her voice full of expectation. "I did," I replied, my voice steady but uncertain. She apologized, but I'm not sure what to do with that. It's a start, but it doesn't change everything. "I understand," she said softly. "I just hope this means there's a chance for us to fix things, even if it's slowly." The next few weeks were filled with uncertainty. I had already built a life for myself that didn't depend on my parents, and I wasn't willing to undo that. But the possibility of reconciliation, however small, lingered in the back of my mind. I wasn't sure if I was ready to open that door again. But I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't allow myself to be dragged back into their toxic cycle. Months later, my parents came to me, unannounced. This time, it wasn't about money. They were different, smaller, humbler. My father, usually so authoritative, had a softer look in his eyes. My mother wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes. They were just ordinary. "Can we talk?" my father asked, his voice quieter than usual. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at them, taking in their new reality. "What's this about?" I asked, feeling a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. "We've been to therapy," my mother explained. "We've been working on ourselves. We realize now how wrong we were, how selfish we've been." My father nodded. "We can't change the past, but we want to try and make things right. We understand now that you've always been there for us, but we've never truly been there for you." The words didn't hit me the way I thought they would. I had expected anger, bitterness, maybe even a sense of closure, but instead, all I felt was numbness. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, "but I'll listen. If you're serious about changing, we can take small steps." That meeting wasn't a grand reconciliation. It wasn't a return to the family I had once hoped for, but it was a start. And for the first time, I felt like I had control over my own life, over the boundaries I had set. I wasn't the desperate daughter anymore, hoping for approval. I was a mother, fiercely protecting my children and choosing to live life on my own terms. Walking away from that conversation, I didn't feel any of the heavy weight that used to come with being their daughter. Instead, I felt a sense of quiet strength, knowing that I had already created the life I needed. And whether they changed or not, I was finally free.